How are you doing? So the first thing I've got to declare, as you can tell from my accent, I'm a Pom. We've got a few Poms in the room, and I'm actually a certain type of Pom. I'm actually from the north of England. So I was hoping there might be subtitles over there, because I'm going to say some words like budget that some of my own team never really understand, and when I'm really serious about budget, they just look at me and start laughing. I'm like, well, where's the bloody budget? And they're like not taking it seriously when we're overspending. So I've been asked to sort of talk about three things I learned, or have learned, and I'm still learning as I go through my career. So I'm going to give a little brief history and sort of intertwine those in through. So I'm from the north of England, and I wanted to get away from my parents as quickly as I could when I turned 18 to go to university. And I didn't want to go down south. Any southerners here? Yeah. Because when you're brought up in the north of England, we're called northern monkeys and they're called southern fairies. So I went to Newcastle, studied accountancy, and then actually swapped to marketing because I realised I wasn't an accountant and not really that good with numbers. And left university and realised actually you do have to go down south in the UK because that's where all the jobs are. And I was then really lucky to end up working for Sony PlayStation, and I joined PlayStation at the very end of PlayStation 1, and we were just launching PlayStation 2, and it was a very exciting time. And we'd gone from market entrant, if anyone knows the video game space, at that point Sega and Nintendo ruled the roost. They were absolutely dominant, and Sony wasn't even in video games. And when in the first console, they call it first iteration, they went from entering the market to number one. And I joined at that point, and it was a really exciting, pumping place to be. And through that journey of my time there, we launched PlayStation 2. That became, and still is, the biggest selling console in the globe ever. And also saw the launch of PlayStation 3. But the interesting thing about PlayStation was the consoles that we actually put out there weren't the most technically advanced on the market. In fact, Nintendo back in the day with the Nintendo 64 was better than the PlayStation 1, and actually the PlayStation 2 was not as powerful as when Microsoft entered the market, because they suddenly realized, hey, there's a lot of money to be made, and also gaming was moving into the home, moving from the boys' bedroom and actually becoming played by a lot of people. And so really, what I learned about why did we were so successful, why we were able to do with an inferior machine become the dominant player in a market when we entered. And it actually came through Ken Kutaragi. He was the Japanese founder of PlayStation. We were almost like the naughty young son for Sony. You know, at the first, you barely saw Sony on any of the boxes, even the console. But what he did was very irreverent, and he said, whenever you met him and when any meetings, when he wasn't asleep, because in Japan, actually the most senior person in the room can have a nap if they want to, which is always a really cool insight. So, you know, you'd get all these video game programmers from all around the world presenting all their software and the latest games, and Ken would be in the front row just nodding along. But what Ken always said and always went back to is the reason he was excited and the reason he entered this space and made Sony, he'd been at Sony for years, and why he challenged them to move into the space was he wanted to make gaming cool. And that was it. That was as simple as that. That's how PlayStation 1, it lost its way with PlayStation 3, and it's back again with PlayStation 4. But over that period of time, it was as simple as that. So everything we had to do had that filter. And then I was lucky enough that Disney decided that they wanted to go from licensing their content to various publishers and people who made video games to actually make money out of video games in a really serious sense and go vertical and do it themselves. So they approached me. And when Mickey comes knocking at the door, you really can't say no, because it is such an amazing organization. So I found myself leaving, not wanting to, but it was too big an opportunity not to go and work for probably the biggest entertainment brand in the world. And again, what became apparent and what I saw through Disney and what Walt set up originally when he founded the organization, the company, and built it and grew it, was he just wanted to make children happy. And he wanted to add magic to everything that, from a children's experience and point of view. And that's really one of my first themes that I wanted to talk about was, this was prior to a chap called Simon Sinek. Has anyone heard of him? Yep. Everyone know the Golden Circle? And it's what Simon did was codify really what I'd learned and seen two great leaders establish in two organisations, which is their brand why that company existed. And what Simon, if you watch the video, I really encourage you to look it up. It's a TED Talk. It's not a very good TED Talk. The quality of it's absolutely atrocious if you have seen it. And he has to swap mic halfway through because it's that bad. But in the message in it is huge around the golden circle of people don't buy what you do. They don't buy how you do it. They buy why you do it. And that's why PlayStation was able to win a space where they were actually inferior in terms of tech, because people weren't buying the machine, they were buying why what we were doing. And that ethos strung through everything that we did. And I've really brought that philosophy to Cotton On. Like, the business had it. Nigel, when he founded it, knew what he was doing, but we never articulated it. And so I've really been working very hard with the business to really focus on that. For Cotton On, we want to make a difference in people's lives now. And it's simple as that. Now is a really important one for Cotton On, because in retail, as I'm learning, I'm still relatively new, 3 years into retail, is everything's very fast and everything happens now and it's in the next hour or the next day or the next week. But making a difference in people's lives, whether we're making a difference in their attraction of someone at a barbecue and because they've got the right gear on, whether it's what we do in our foundation and how we change people's lives in Uganda, or even our own retail teams in the launch of our universities, all about everything links back to that filter. So that would be the first thing I've learned and want to carry on and pass on that message. The second point would be what I learned from particularly Sony and Disney in terms of international, is how the different models available to you out there if you how you want to grow internationally. Sony was a very autonomous model. They realized pretty early on that you couldn't do everything out of Tokyo. So realized that regional hubs and then decentralization is really important. Disney was slightly different and took a longer journey to get there, and they still like to have control over their brand a little bit more than Sony were prepared to let go. But the view that you can actually control everything out of a hub and globally is a really challenging model. It is possible, but I think my advice would be, if you're working internationally, start to work out how you decentralize, if you haven't already, into those markets and bring the right people in on the ground there, because that's how you really become relevant and know the culture of that place. And then the biggest learning, I think, the final piece from my career as I've gone from going from Disney, I came over here. My old team used to present our slate to all our distributors. We weren't vertical in every market at Disney for video games and some of the other content and movies we did. We used third parties, and every year on January, there was a cinema in the building in Hammersmith in London, and we'd present the slate, all the content that was coming up to all these guys, and they'd invest and say how much money they're going to put and what they're going to buy. And then on that night, we'd take them out for dinner. And it was always the Russians and the Aussies that wanted to actually stay out late and party beyond the dinner and go nightclubbing. And that's how I ended up here, because Rod, who headed up THQ at the time, who was Disney's distributor for video games in Australia, had just said he was after a marketing director. We were at the bar, and I said, and he couldn't find anyone, or he was having a problem. And I said to him, have you looked externally, overseas? And he went, no. And I just remember waking up the next day with a text saying, are you serious? And 4 weeks later, I was applying for a visa. And then, so there, and I worked for Target for a little while and as part of the turnaround there, and then joined Cotton On. And the biggest thing I've learned as you grow through your career and you go into industries, particularly retail, where it's fast, and e-com and digital, where it's all live, the final piece I'd want to share with you really is about having a plan. It's really important. You can flex your plan, but you've got to stick to your plan. It's very easy for a board, senior execs to try and get you to sway and move and change course and do this and do that. And there's a lot of things you can do, but if you plan and you stick to it, it's really powerful. And there's another chap I want to reference who is Jim Collins. I don't know if any of you have read Good to Great. Jim's actually chosen Cotton On to be one of his next case studies. We're actually going out there next February to go and have a week with him in terms of setting our strategy and where we want to go for the next 10 years. And what he talks about is get your plan, do your 20-mile march, and probably the biggest thing, and it's actually one of the hardest things to do, but of his 12 questions and what he asks you to think about as you build your strategy is your stop doing list, not your to-do list. It's very easy to build a to-do list, isn't it? I'm sure everyone in the room's got a to-do list. But actually, how do you actually identify what you're not going to do and then communicate that and stick to it and link that to your plan is huge, because in a world where it's only going to get busier and we're all on our phones all the time, you can have emails 24/7. We'll probably move from email at some point to some new way of talking. Snapchat's a new way to talk about from a brand point of view, which I'm still trying to get my head around how that works. But it's all happening so fast that there's so much opportunity that you can get lost in just the noise of all that opportunity rather than focus. And really, that's how you move the needle. So I think in a wrap, that's sort of my journey, and also just some of the key things I've learned as part of my journey into where I've come to here and living in such an amazing country. And feel very grateful to be here. So thank you.